If you're an artist, you might use Photoshop for your projects. So you may be wondering, well, what can I use to animate? Believe it or not, you can actually use Photoshop to animate. So in Photoshop, if you want to animate, you can animate, basic GIFs. You can also do more complex animations. So to me, I think it can be pretty intuitive and, also pretty simple in many ways. And I would definitely recommend it if you have Photoshop and that's something you want to do. And I'm just going to be taking you through some of the basics of Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to create a video timeline. Now you may notice here that there's also create frame animation. Now this is also something you can do, but personally I don't like doing create frame animation. That really is for much more basic animation, like a GIF. But if you want something more complex, you really should choose a video timeline. And also you can't really convert between the two. I mean, you sort of can, but it kind of gets weird. So you should really have everything in mind in the beginning. Speaking of which, so the file I'm using is 920 by 1080, which is like the YouTube standard. It's just like a standard HD format in general, and I would recommend that for your documents. So we're going to create video timeline right here. And so you're going to be met with this like basic timeline. You have your layer, you have layer 0, which is just this plain layer over here, as well as an audio track. So what we're going to do is the most important thing we can start right now is to set our timeline frame rate. Now, in general, you're going to go with 24 frames per second because that really is considered like the industry standard, at least in Western animation. But those are more for complex animations and stuff like that. So if you're more of a beginner or if you just want something simpler, you may want to go with 12 frames per second. It's going to be a lot easier to do that. You're not going to have to animate as much. You can also do 8 frames per second, 30 frames per second if you want something really fast. But, I'm going to go with 24 frames per second because I'm industry standard. Okay, never mind. Alright, so what we're going to do is that this is just going to be our background animation. This is going to be our little white background. Everything above it will be, like in Photoshop in general, it starts out with this white background, and everything on top of it is like an invisible in the background. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to create a video group, and there's somewhat different ways you can do this. What I'm going to do is that I'm just going to split it. I'm just going to split up this layer, split that playhead, and just drag this right here, and now we have our video group. I'm going to name it Roughs. This is what we'll have a rough animation, and it's important you have the playhead over where you're drawing. As you can see right now, you may be able to tell these frames, this layer, so you see in the timeline how many frames this is going to last. It may look a little different from other animation software you used, but this is basically an indicator of how long it's going to be. And you can just drag it and see how long you want it to be, or what you can do is you can also make it really big, and you can see, okay, this is a frame, this is 2 frames, and in general, if you're animating in 2s, you would be doing this, you'd be doing 2 frames. So you go here, split, split, if you want to do that. Now another thing too is that you can also add audio here. And what's good about Photoshop, you can just basically add any audio you want. Just click add audio and it'll show up here. I'm just going to choose some random audio just to show you. This is audio. And I'm just going to show you some basic details. What you can do is you can change the volume. It's pretty nice. You can also do a fade in, which will fade it in and fade out. You can also mute the audio. I'm going to delete that because I'm not going to be using any audio today. But yeah, just some very basic audio functions, and that's good to know. So now that we've got everything set up, I'm going to show you some basics of animating. So what's cool about Photoshop is that, so if you're an artist and you work in Photoshop, everything will be native to you. Something like Adobe Animate is very complex and everything else, and you'll have more of a learning curve versus if you go in Photoshop, you have all your brushes here, you see these brushes, you have your eraser, you have all these things set up already, so that could be very convenient and helpful for you, especially if you're not doing super complex animation. So I'm just going to do something, so it's yellow for some reason, I'm going to do something very easy right now. And that's just going to be a very simplistic head turn. I'm just doing this for demonstration reasons right now, and you'll be able to get the point by what I'm doing. So we'll start off with this very extremely well drawn head, and so we have this as a first frame, and I'm going to draw the end frame And what we can do now is that we'll have to put on onion skin so that I can see my first frame. Onion skins are extremely useful. So we're going to go to your hamburger symbol. And you have all these different settings. You can do frames before, how many frames you want it to be showing you before, how many frames after, how many, like the spacing, whether you want it like just a set of spacing, how many frames per onion skin, the onion skin, and you can change opacity, and the opacity determines how light or how dark it is. And you have blend mode, which will show how the colors kind of blend. Normal, multiply, just have it on multiply, which means that basically the colors are going to be darker on top of each other versus just being kind of like that. And what you can do now is that I like usually with roughs I animate in different colors, but I'm not going to do that right now. So I'm going to show the end pose, which is the person looking at the side. And that looks good in terms of what we're doing right now. And another cool thing you can do in Photoshop is you can do tweens. So tweens, basically, if you do anything about if you know anything about like 2D animation, computer animation, basically it's when you get the computer to move things for you, where you have something in the beginning and the end, where you show something in its beginning position and at the end position, and the computer fills it all in for you. You don't have to draw it multiple times. And you can do a simplistic version of that in Adobe Animate. So let's say, for whatever reason, I wanted to move this head to the side. What I can do is I can click position over here, this little like stopwatch time thingy, move the header towards the end. And what I can do is that I can move it. And I can also move this down here indicates where it is. Like this down here indicates the position and where it is, so I can move it wherever I want, which is nice. So if I play it, it's very fast, but if I play it, it would move a little bit to the side. Let me just make this longer. I'm going to make this a lot longer because it's way too short. I can drag out this little keyframe thingy. Alright, so now you get a better idea. As you can see, the head is moving. Yep, now I don't want that, so I'm going to delete it, but I think you get the idea. You can also do it for opacity and for style. And, these are things I should probably talk more about in a separate video because it can, it's worth talking about a little bit more in depth, I think. And so, let's say I want to have some in-betweens now. And, I'm not going to be worrying too much about length of anything right now. Just because my focus is, just getting the basics down. I want my onion skin to show a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to throw an in-between. So this is pretty basic, as you can see. I want to teach you some very valuable things right now, and I think the most valuable thing you can know in terms of tips and tricks when it comes to Photoshop are keyboard shortcuts. And they absolutely were a lifesaver to me. I made another animation. I've made other stuff in the past, and animations in the past, where I did not know these shortcuts, and it really just took so long. And knowing these shortcuts really, really sped up my workflow and improved my workflow so much. It will make everything so much faster for you. So some of them are just the built-in shortcuts, where you can just copy and paste a layer. Some of them are built-in shortcuts, others are shortcuts that you can add, and I'll tell you about them. So one useful thing you can do is to duplicate a layer. So as you can see, you go to duplicate layer right here, and it's like you have to do this whole thing, this prompt comes up, okay. And that's fine once in a while, but if you're doing that a lot, that could become a real pain. And that's what happened to me in another project I made where I was duplicating, this stupid pop-up kept coming up. It got so annoying. So there's an easier way to do that. Just click the frame, Control-C, which copies, and Control-V-Shift, which kind of copies it in place. And there's no prompt, there's no anything, except sometimes it may not it may paste, but not paste perfectly in place. So you can just do that again if it doesn't work. So we just got that. And of course, there's the obvious keyboard shortcuts: undo, redo, Control Z, or Command if you're using Mac. And what's also important is to make your own shortcuts. As you can see here, you actually can see what shortcuts I use. To split at the playhead, I use Command I. I just go here, Command I. To turn on my onion skins, I use Command O, which is extremely convenient because it's like, oh, I'm drawing, I don't want my onion skins anymore, And if I want my onion skins again, all I have to do, Command O, and you have my onion skins. And of course, you can have Photoshop shortcuts for your regular drawing workflow, like B and E or eraser, or brush to eraser respectively. So B and E are brush to eraser respectively. That's very useful for me. And, I just think it's very important to have those shortcuts. You can make shortcuts for different things depending on what you're doing, but I just think those are some good basic shortcuts to make things faster for you. So, people complain a lot about Photoshop for animating, and as you can see, it can get a little annoying with all these long frames, and there's also a very annoying issue that does occur with this. And I won't be teaching much about that today because that is a little bit more in depth. But basically, my recommendation is to avoid having this issue, which is basically a syncing issue. If you don't want to have problems with syncing and you don't want to have nonsense, just keep your frame rate the same. Do not change your frame rate. Have it the way you want it at the beginning. Otherwise, things will get annoying very fast. And another thing that you need to know is that it can also get kind of confusing with the header. Like, you may not know where's the header over, like which frame is it over, and you may get this common. You'll get this common pop-up where could not use the brush tool because the timeline playhead is not over the target layer in the timeline. So your header needs to be over your target layer, otherwise it's going to keep bothering you. And I think people complain about that because it can get kind of annoying after a while. It isn't too intuitive on that front. It's also missing a lot of the tools that you would get in Adobe Animate, like there's no camera tweening, which I like camera tweening a lot. That's basically where you can kind of move over everything, and that's an Adobe Animate thing. There's the only tweens for certain layers. And I forgot to show you this before, but you can also have these built-in tweens. Once again, that's probably for another video. And the tweens themselves aren't all that incredible. So this is not really, you would not do computer animation with this at all. So it isn't always intuitive and it can be annoying. And another thing that I've noticed is a bug is that the audio will kind of not work. Like, you'll either have no audio or it will only come from one earbud for some reason. And the easiest way to fix that is just to restart. So, it usually works, but if you have anything weird, you can just restart it. And I definitely like this overall. I definitely do like animating in Photoshop, and it could be great for some animation. Although at times, it can be a little bit of a pest. And, you do have to kind of work through some problems and figure out a good workflow for you. So I really hope this video can help. Just leave your comments below if this helped you, and let me know what you thought of it. And if I should do more tutorial type stuff in the future. This was like my first real tutorial of anything. So it's, pretty basic and stuff. I'm kind of just starting out. I've never really done a video tutorial before. So hope this was alright. And if you liked it, make sure to like and subscribe, and I really hope I can help you out. And I hope you can learn a little bit about some Photoshop animation today. There's definitely some real benefits to animating in Photoshop, and it could be really cool. So I hope you got something out of it. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.